So, guys, pardon me, the dishwasher is running in the background. My brother likes to do his dishes after he goes to bed. So, um, I do want to say that I took a birthday trip around America. So, I went to the Grand Rapids show, and then I went to Oregon, and then I also went to Hawaii for a couple of days. And I'm going to include some pictures of the Hawaiian sunset. And then also, I went to Seattle to go to the AEW Collision show, and then during the when I was in Chicago, during the All Out show, Tony Khan announced tickets to AEW Wrestle Dream. So fortunately, I called Alaska Airlines and I got another, you know, day in Seattle, just an extra like $50-$60 just to change my flight, and I'm very happy that I did. This was a very stellar show, and I wanted to go over all the matches on the card. That first was an 8-person match, and some of the people in it was Athena and Shane Taylor and Keith Lee. Like, I really appreciate Keith Lee doing like big power spots, and I really felt that this opening match was kind of like their ROH match, like get all the different ROH wrestlers. And I would also just say that I'm really happy to see Keith Lee doing big power spots, doing flips, like throwing people around and stuff like that. Like, I really think that he needs to kind of be moved towards a singles title on the main roster. Like, definitely he's a little lost in translation. Like, if you kind of do a feud between him and Powerhouse Hobbs, like, or you do Eddie Kingston versus Keith Lee, I think that that would be a really great feud. Like, he's definitely not in the right spot really, but it was an alright opener. Next one was Claudio Castagnoli versus Josh Barnett. I didn't really like this match because usually with Claudio Castagnoli, he moves very slowly in his matches. Like, he's kind of like a slow like grappler type of person. Like, I honestly think that he and Kurt Angle would have a really awesome match. Kurt Angle in his prime or Bret Hart in his prime, but I just kind of just don't like those slow, or Chris Benoit. But I do think that the match moves a little slowly, and then also Josh Barnett's a really big guy. He looks a little bit like maybe like a cousin of Brock Lesnar. So I do think that when you look at this whole card, there wasn't a lot of like big man wrestlers, a lot of like you know meaty men wrestlers. So I do think they could have advertised this as like a big man match, and definitely that's a missed opportunity. The next match was Luchasaurus versus Nick Wayne, and there's a couple of things that I want to say that the show has been done for over 24 hours, and we all know what happened at the end of the show where Nick Wayne turned heel. So if he did not turn heel, this would have been a very bad match because obviously with Luchasaurus, it should be like one choke slam, you're done. It should not be something like Nick Wayne getting a two fall. But I do think that obviously knowing that Nick Wayne was involved later in the night, really, this all could have been kind of like a ruse. So I do think that how the match kind of went out with the end result, with how the match happened, and then the end result later that night, it's good, really. But also if it wasn't, but Nick Wayne turning heel, this match worked. But if he was staying babyface, this would have been a bad match because you cannot have Luchasaurus. Like, Nick Wayne's kind of like an enhancement talent, and he's kind of being trained under Darby, a wrestler who's not established like Chris Jericho or whoever, just almost like a lackey of Darby Allin. So I do think that you can't kind of have him win that much. He almost has to be kind of like a Wheeler Yuta type of person, or a Wheeler Yuta type of role. So I do think that that it hurts Luchasaurus if he was staying babyface, because obviously then it shows that he's having a hard time beating a person who is very low on the rung, really. And Luchasaurus needs to be featured like a Dynamo. The next match was the Acclaim versus TMDK. Like, there's a couple things I didn't like about this match. Like, the Acclaim, they've not done a lot of good raps recently. Like, a lot of it's kind of repetitive. It's referencing that they're into porn. Didn't he do that a year ago with another Japanese team? You can call me senpai, you in the dojo, you watching hentai. And then also his thing about talking about anuses and glory holes and stuff like that. Like, obviously he's done that so many times that he almost becomes like a Pokemon. Like, that's all he can kind of say. So I really appreciate if he could do a little bit more. And then the other thing is that I wish there were kind of like diss videos or whatever, or like a diss music video type of thing. Like, that's the Acclaim at their best, really. And they kind of really stepped away from that. And I partially blame Tony Khan for not booking them like that, because what they did with Swerve and Keith Lee, that was them at their best, really, and they sort of fell apart from that. I'm not sure if it's just they don't, and I think the root is they just don't have the same amount of attention from Tony Khan. They're just belt holders, but they're not. I mean, they do fine without that extra stuff, but I think the extra stuff would make them a bigger deal. But I also did not like TMDK because I think they came out with Zack Sabre Jr. and it doesn't look good when you are doing a match and people in your faction are actually losing, and then you're going to have a match that might main event. Like I thought Zack Sabre Jr. and Bryan Danielson would main event, and I was but also Bryan Danielson is possibly before the ending was like the biggest wrestler on their show really. So I do think that if you're if you are gonna wrestle the champion and you have members in your faction lose, that does not look good. That makes you kind of look kind of weak, really. So that's an issue. But the other thing that I would say is that I do like AEW because they do a really good job of making sure that their own people win. Because if this was TNA wrestling, they would do a lot of putting over other promotions, like how you see a lot of WWE people win, or ECW people win, or WCW people win, or like with Kazarian. I think he lost like the World Cup and became Suicide, but he lost against AAA, and a lot of people were kind of saying that it's just like, it's almost like, as I said, it's like a Pokemon game. Like TNA is weak against these companies. These companies are super effective against TNA wrestlers. So I kind of appreciate Tony Khan not doing that, where it's like, or it's like every match has to be a New Japan person winning. They don't win a lot of that, so it kind of shows that AEW wrestlers can win matches and be successful. They're not like it's not like they get buried. It's not like Tony Khan's burying his own people for the sake of other companies. The next thing that I would say is that this is the card, MJF versus the Righteous. I really appreciate what they did with the Righteous. Like, they honestly did a great job of making the Righteous a big deal, giving them mic time, having a match on Collision where they show that their deadly attack is really just hitting somebody with like a piece of wood and double stomping and other things like that. So I do think that it kind of just told you, like, it gave you a visual of, okay, MJF is in danger. I also like MJF because obviously he's great at hyping the crowd. I really appreciate what he did where, he did like the body slam and he did the kangaroo kick. So a lot of people just like that about him because he's able to hype up an audience with like moves that are kind of like a little mediocre. But he's definitely a good crowd popper wrestler. So that's kind of why he makes a good champion. And I also kind of like this match a lot because you've seen a lot of like times where MJF gets injured, goes to the back, and Adam Cole does all the work. And the problem is if you do that, then you're almost like, why isn't Adam Cole the champion? Because it shows that he can handle two people, but MJF has not been in those shoes. So I do think that I do think it works, but I also appreciate all the time they put in the Righteous because really the next thing for the Righteous is that they need to be in the regular tag team division. They need to be on AEW television. So if they go back to ROH and they're irrelevant, then that's a huge waste of time. That's really, really sad. They have a lot of potential, and I also like their theme song. A lot of people like the finger snapping and then just like the backwoods banjo that they have. There's a lot that they can do with it, but I also appreciate that, like at one point I was not happy to see the Righteous. I was like, oh man, they should do Matt and Jeff Hardy versus MJF and Adam Cole. That really looks like a pay-per-view match. But I also learned that, what if they save that for All Out or for All In 2024 or a bigger, like maybe a really big show. I think that would work a lot better. But, but this shows AEW subverting expectations, which is good. But it also shows their ability to be like, okay, well, there's another team that has good talkers, has people that can kind of hype a match, and then actually we will kind of back those people. We don't do the TNA wrestling thing where it's like, oh, well, we're just going to keep you on the back burner because that's not good. So, use everybody and sometimes subvert expectations, which they did. Eddie Kingston versus Katsuyori Shibata. I didn't get into this match. With me, Eddie Kingston's kind of confusing. Like, he kind of is like a hardcore wrestler, and he kind of presents himself as a hardcore wrestler, and he's also friends with Jon Moxley. So when I see Eddie Kingston, I think of hardcore wrestler. but he kind of does like a lot of slow grappling. So I didn't really get into this match for that reason. So I don't have a lot to say about it. Chris Statlander versus Julia Hart. I really like this match. They did a great job building Julia Hart the past couple of weeks because they're members of the House of Black that are out on injury. So it's good that it's really really good that they are choosing to utilize Julia Hart and make her a big deal. And then also she has an undefeated streak, and she's kind of really brutal in her matches, really. So I do think that it shows that AEW can really, if they want to, have a woman and really build a storyline around her. And I also think that there were a lot of people that wanted to see Julia Hart win. And then also, too, I felt bad that she didn't win because what do you really do with Chris Statlander? Like, Chris Statlander, to me, she really hasn't done that much, really. She just came back from injury and took Jade Cargill's place, really. So I do think that she's kind of not really earned it. More so, Julia Hart's had earned it. So it's like, what do you do with Julia Hart after this? You could have done more. It would have been more profitable to give the Julia Hart versus Chris Statlander. When they were doing their match, I liked how Julia Hart was more of a hardcore and she was kind of really brutal, and Chris Statlander was more like that powerhouse type of female. So I do think that like their contrast of styles and all that. But I do think the wrong person won in this. The Fatal 4-Way Tag match. This also surprised me too because even though it was kind of like a spots fest and there were a lot of suplexes and other things, I really thought that Hook and Orange Cassidy were going to win because I do think that as a tag team they could be very very popular, and ultimately you kind of want to take them to the next level. Really, you don't want to kind of have Orange Cassidy just being like the cool wrestler and then Hook just being the guy holding his father's FTW title. You got to kind of evolve their roles. And obviously with the issues with Jungle Boy, you almost have to look at Hook and Orange Cassidy as like a replacement fourth pillar. So I thought they were going to win, and they deserved to win, but they gave it to the Young Bucks. And it doesn't surprise me for two reasons. Obviously, they're vice presidents. They have backstage pull, but obviously FTR versus the Young Bucks, that can be a really great match. And that's always going to be a match that's going to be a main event show, and many people just don't know the direction of the title, really. So I do think that that was a good call, even though I think a stronger call would have been Hook and Orange Cassidy. Because even if they lose, there could have been that type of them working together, going through the ranks, and then actually really earning it and then getting it, the same way he did with the Acclaimed. Swerve versus Adam Page, I think to me this was the best match on the card because this really was a match that took Swerve Strickland and made him a big deal. Like, I do think that, as I've said before, that, a lot of people were talking about Swerve being the first black AEW champion, and I also think that, with Hobbs and Keith Lee, there's a problem with both Hobbs and Keith Lee. I do think that with Hobbs, that he doesn't really talk that much and he gets a lot of dark matches. So I do think that part of it is that he is the powerhouse pussy in a sense. He doesn't really advocate for himself, or he may be just like that young kid that's like, I want to learn, I want to go at a slow pace because everybody says that's a good thing, but he needs to kind of really grasp opportunities. Hobbs, I think Hobbs needs to kind of advocate for himself more backstage, or he needs to have like a Mark Henry be his manager. And then there's Keith Lee. Keith Lee has health issues, but I also think that he kind of feels like he's there to be there. So I do think with Swerve, he kind of comes off as somebody who wants a direction. And if he wants to be the first black AEW champion, I think that's good. I really think they need to get to Swerve versus MJF at some point. I do think if you did Swerve versus MJF at Full Gear, that would be a really great program. And I also think that would be very unpredictable. And Swerve's kind of still a bit of a likable heel, so I do think that MJF is trying to be a likable babyface, but really a heel deep down, really. So I do think that they would have a good match chemistry. But I would also kind of put Swerve to the next level. And also this match did that by being a long duration. And I also feel like they did a lot of moves, and it also kind of made you think that, well, all the EVPs are going to win. So that's Adam Page, and he didn't do that. He did was right for business. And also because he's a former AEW champion, it's a big deal that Swerve beat him. So I do think that, Swerve really needs to get a AEW championship shot. He should not win, but I do think that he needs to have a program with MJF to really stamp him as a main eventer. And there's a lot of people behind him. Like I think that the past 2 days on Collision and also in AEW Wrestle Dream, there was a lot of hype for Swerve. Like obviously he's the hometown hero, but they really need to ride that because I do think that strike while the iron is hot with him. Give him opportunities. Don't treat him like, well, you just got to pop and now you're not a big deal anymore type of thing. Unfortunately, I didn't watch Ricky Starks versus Wheeler Yuta. Like that was my piss break. Get food. Pissed off at the arena because they didn't have any food anymore. These fucking arenas need to kind of have a rule of okay, whatever they get, they need to times it by 1.25 or 1.5 really, because a lot of arenas I've been to either run out of food or they close down things early, and it's also disrespectful. Like give people overtime, keep them a little bit open, a little bit more. You're selling like $15 burgers and 2 hot dogs like $20 at an arena, so obviously, you're making so much in profit. Arenas should not be closing down their concession stands out really really early. So that's one problem if you go to these shows is that the concession stands close very early. So Ricky Starks versus Wheeler Yuta, I didn't watch it for a couple of reasons. That number one, this is a fuck you to Ricky Starks because he should be winning matches, he should be on pay-per-views, but this is not the way to do it because what has Wheeler Yuta done? He's kind of been more like a jobber. So I don't think that he's kind of earned any form of credibility. I think that a more credible thing would have been if you kind of had maybe Samoa Joe versus Ricky Starks, or you had like maybe a returning Keith Lee versus Ricky Starks, or I think it's like Tomohiro Ishii versus Ricky Starks. Really, I think that would have been more appropriate, or that would have been more appropriate because that would have kind of took him to the next level, really. Not just Wheeler Yuta, who kind of has been the Blackpool Combat Club's bitch, like somebody who always loses every single match. So I don't think that was right for him. But obviously, the next match is Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. It was another really great match. There was some of it that I didn't like. It did start off slow with a lot of grappling. Definitely, they started to do moves and flips, and it went on for a really good duration. And I really enjoyed it. It was definitely like one of the best matches of the night, really. And I also want to kind of like jump cut a bit and say that I really enjoyed Christian Cage versus Darby Allin, but really when Edge came out, that was not part of the match, really. So I do think that what Edge did overshadows it, but it's understandable. So if I was to kind of tell you the top 3 matches, I would say number 1 would be Swerve versus Adam Page. And then I would say Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr., then Christian Cage versus Darby Allin as my top 3 matches for the show. And then the 4th one would be the Don Callis family versus Chris Jericho. One thing that I did not like about both the Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. match and the Don Callis family and Chris Jericho and Golden Elite match, you had 2 matches that were like, 20 plus minutes long, back to back, really. So when I was watching the FTR versus Aussie Open match, I wasn't really into that. Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. did a really great job. So did the Don Callis family, Chris Jericho, and the Golden Elite. There are a couple things I want to say about it that I really did not like Aubrey Edwards in this match. I think what happened was it looks like she was crawling on top of one of the members for a long, long time, really, because she was trying to prevent them from entering the ring. So it kind of looked very, very stupid. And then the next thing that happened was she kind of did that so Don Callis would help interfere in the match. So if somebody's doing that for a very long time, it's like, what are you doing? And if it's for a couple of minutes, and it's almost like it looks a little ridiculous. Or why is she lying on the ground for like 4 or 5 minutes? Is she hurt? Or is she checking on a wrestler? It just does not look. It was a botch. Probably one of the worst botches. Probably the worst botch I've ever seen live. And then the next thing is that I'm happy Sammy Guevara, not Sammy Callahan, Sammy Guevara got the win because of 2 things. Because everybody was saying they think Sammy Guevara was going to get the pinfall, but I think Sammy Guevara was going to get pinned, but he actually did the match, and he scored the pinfall, and that's actually really important because you need to take him to the next level. And you can't do something like be like, okay, well, he's been the jobber on the Jericho Appreciation Society. Now for the Don Callis family, he needs to be the jobber. Because also it kind of shows in storytelling, well, now it's great that I joined the John Callis family because I'm not really a jobber, or I'm not really just I'm not really like, the Eddie and the Ed and Eds, or I'm not really like the Butters and then with Carbon, Kyle, Stan, and Kenny, really. Like, he needs to kind of prove that he's better with Don Callis, really. So that really helped him out. And then also, he can't always be losing. And also, he gets a huge reaction from the crowd. A lot of people just think that he's an asshole, slappable face. So I do think that that what he did really helped him out. The end result did a lot more positives than negatives. Even though the crowd didn't really like that, but it was a really good match. Like I said before, two 20-minute matches are not that good. And FTR versus Aussie Open, I was kind of really, really bored, and I was not like really into this match. This was another match I think a lot of people could have used as a piss break, and sadly, that I pray to God, I thank God that I really learned to appreciate professional wrestling shows because, and then I also just kind of had a strong hunch Edge was going to appear because if they're going to end with Christian Cage, who's Edge's friend, and Darby Allin, it really, really, they really, really had to have Edge. And there's so many talk about it, so I knew that Edge was going to appear because of that. But what I kind of would say that FTR and Aussie Open, if I knew that if I knew it was going to end with if I knew it was going to end with Christian Cage, Darby Allin, and no Edge appearance, and if I was psychic and saw it, I would have walked out during the FTR and Aussie Open match because FTR and Aussie Open have very long matches. But you had two matches that were like 40 minutes long, really, so it just gasses the hell out of me. And then again, when you had the pre-show and all these matches, I think these are like 14 matches altogether, really. So that is very, very daunting. And I was kind of saying a joke in my head, like, what's another? Did Tony Khan also pick up overly long shows from Antonio Inoki? Because I remember like with the New Japan show, I think it was Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega. That show was like 6 or 7 hours long, and a bunch of people were complaining. And they do a bunch of shows like that in New Japan Pro Wrestling where the shows are like 6 hours or 5 to 6 hours. And thankfully, like with COVID, I mean, with a blessing in disguise from COVID is that, they broke up WrestleMania into 2 3 to 4 hour nights, really. So even though it's like a pause, that pause is helpful. But you can't have shows consistently that are 4 or 5 hours because that is way too much wrestling. And definitely when you have two matches that are 20 minutes long, and then you have this match, it kind of gasses the audience, really. So I do think that this was like, I know this was kind of like the penultimate breather, like the match is supposed to give everybody a breath before Edge and Christian Cage came out. But I said, like, thank God, thank God I had the energy. Thank God I didn't fall asleep or whatever. But like, thank God, I just I didn't get so tired because I would have left. And then the last match was Christian Cage versus Darby Allin, and this was a fucking brutal match. And I would say that, first of all, fuck you, Vince McMahon, you asshole. Fuck you, Vince, because Christian Cage is one of the best wrestlers out there, and he's one of the best heels, and Vince didn't utilize him. And actually, I would say that obviously AEW Christian Cage is way better than TNA Christian Cage because obviously he's on a bigger platform, he's working with bigger stars, better presentation, and Christian Cage really plays like an asshole and somebody who hits below the belt very, very good. And I also appreciate him being very ruthless and kind of living up to that, both with his verbiage and also his actions, and also with his and all the stuff that he was doing. In this match, really, I think that there are two things that I was concerned about, like when Christian Cage was like tearing up the ring and exposing the wood, and then he was also doing the spot where he was slamming Darby Allin on the stairs. That I don't like that in matches, because when you do that, I think that if I was a referee, I would just call that no contest or throw out the match or say disqualification, because how do you put that into a match? And you don't. How do you put that in a 2 out of 3 falls match, or a regular match, and it's not a no disqualification match and get away with it? That makes no sense. It's like the same thing if it's like the same thing I've seen in a bunch of matches where some wrestlers may just take another wrestler and they may just throw them through a table, or they may go through tables together, or somebody choke slams somebody through like the announce table. Oh, how is that not a disqualification? That makes no sense at all. So it's not a good look. But I honestly think that they could have said like 2 out of 3 falls hardcore match. I appreciate the Nick Wayne turn because it really helped Luchasaurus because it was a turn, and obviously it makes the earlier match look like a ruse really. So it helped make it look like that that Nick Wayne isn't just a baby face that could beat Luchasaurus easily when he's on probably the level of Wheeler Yuta. So there's no like kind of favoritism, but I also kind of liked that Christian won. Really, I think that again that even if Darby won this match and even if he had Edge come out at the end, it still wouldn't have been good. I think there's more you can do with Christian Cage. And the next thing I want to talk about before Edge comes out is that I know I said in another video that I do not want to see Edge versus Christian Cage for the TNT title because I feel like it would be better if Edge went after a real championship. I mean, like a major championship like the like MGF's championship, the AEW championship. And I do think that there are very limited circumstances when it's okay for a main event wrestler to be wrestling for a secondary title. Like if you did Undertaker versus Gunter, and Undertaker was like, I've never been the Intercontinental Champion. I want to defeat the guy with like a 600, 700 day record if he keeps it until WrestleMania. That would work. That would also work if John Cena was in that because he was never an Intercontinental Champion and he wants to go for and they both want to go for the Grand Slam. There are certain situations when a wrestler would be good with a secondary title. Also, you look at, I think it was like John Cena and The Rock, and John Cena and Shawn Michaels held the tag team champions because there was kind of like a trust and betrayal storyline. There are certain situations. So, Christian Cage versus Adam Copeland for the TNT Championship, 100% that works because it would be way more about the feud and the storytelling, and then you're actually seeing a real AEW a Christian Cage that is not limited by WWE and Vince McMahon, actually going against an Adam Copeland that we know is one of Vince McMahon's favorites. So in a way that you're almost seeing like the person who has never been allowed to show his best versus somebody who's always been showed his best. And that can be a good dynamic because that's true in life. That some people turn bad because they don't get the respect that they deserve. And then there are some people that they become jealous of, and that could be friends who get the right opportunities. And as a filmmaker, I've definitely felt that way. About okay, well, this person gets certain edges, but I didn't because of company politics or like politics from company we used to work for or whatever. But I do think that this could make a very powerful match, really, and I do think that that I don't mind this closing the show really because there's nothing that's going to follow Adam Copeland appearing. And then I also appreciate Tony Khan for doing that because if he appeared in the middle of the show, it would have been just like Undertaker and Ric Flair in the middle of WrestleMania, or Undertaker and Shawn Michaels during in the middle of WrestleMania versus that being the main event. Like you have to think about in the sense what if nothing can follow that or nothing can be on that level of that. It makes sense to end it with that. With that, even if it's not the heavyweight championship. I do agree with what Dave Meltzer was saying. That I do think that sometimes if you want to draw more money, you should have the heavyweight title defended. But I do think that maybe if let's say AEW is this 10 shows a year, maybe like 7 of the shows the title's defended, 3 of the shows it's not defended. Just because you want to break a monotony. But I do think that maybe if they did something like the NJPW champion versus MJF, just a grudge match, I think that would be good. Or it's like, if MJF loses, he loses the title, but if he wins, he does not get that title type of thing. If you kind of set it up like that. Or if you kind of did something where, as I said, you kind of like shoehorned Swerve or another wrestler, I think that would be good. Or you did Ricky Starks or something like that. But I do kind of think that maybe if you did Ricky Starks versus MJF as MJF's second match, I think that that would have been good. Instead of Wheeler Yuta, I think that would have kind of made the card a lot stronger. That kind of would have taken what Dave Meltzer said about um, definitely definitely just utilizing the World Heavyweight Championship as a draw type of thing. But I do also want to kind of end it with saying that, okay, well, to get back to what I'm saying is that there are times when the heavyweight title should be defended. There are times where it shouldn't main event the show, and definitely it shouldn't have main event this show because obviously what's going to follow MJF versus what's going to follow Adam Copeland appearing, and when he appeared, it was like craziness. And as I said in another video, it's almost like people were crying inside their heads because you know, some people grew up with the mentality of real men don't cry type of that. And he honestly felt like the frat boy coming home. I gave him a hug, and I do apologize if that made him feel uncomfortable, but it meant a lot to me. And I felt kind of bad because there was this guy who was going to take a picture of Adam Copeland, but he kind of got his leg stuck in one of the chairs, and I helped him out. I told him to be careful because I know even though it's Edge and it's a huge deal, it's not worth getting yourself hurt or whatever really. And when Adam Copeland came out and he did, and that arena erupted, it honestly felt like a Royal Rumble pop or WrestleMania pop. So it was a great ending. It kind of gives us a lot of expectations for the future. And as I said, if they do Edge versus Christian over the TNT Championship and they spend the next 6 weeks until Full Gear building up to that, hell yes. I am very afraid that they may do Christian, Luchasaurus, Nick Wayne versus Sting, Edge, and Darby Allin because one-on-one matches mean a lot more. So if you do something like take Christian Cage and you kind of put him in an Edge and you kind of put their actual match as a multi-team match, they can do a great job with that, but it's diminishing. I'm not sure how to say this. It's like Spider-Man versus Venom. That makes a great movie, but if it's like Spider-Man and the Avengers versus 8 or 9 villains from Spider-Man with Venom in it takes away. Or if you did Batman versus the Joker, that's a great movie. But if you did Batman and the Justice League versus the Joker and the Legion of Doom, that would be bad because you're taking the two things, you're taking the thing that works and you're adding other people to it. It diminishes. And but I do think it needs to be a one-on-one feud. It should be like a First Blood or a Bull Rope, or it should be a really brutal match. Really, I think that's the way to do it, and that's what I would want to see. So I'm a little worried about that. I do think that if you did Edge versus Christian Cage TNT Championship Ultimate Grudge match, that would main event, and then you could also do Darby Allin and Sting versus Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus. And then you kind of give Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus the win. That would be the best thing to do because you'd have to have Luchasaurus beat pin Sting. That would be the right thing to do to kind of establish that you're trying to make Luchasaurus a big deal, but you're not doing something where he jobs out to Sting or he keeps jobbing out or whatever. So that would be the way to do it for Full Gear. But there's a lot of just cliffhanger and a lot of good momentum. And a lot of people when we walked out of the arena, we saw the truck and CM Punk is there, and I think I had an issue where my throat was really dry and I wanted to yell fuck CM Punk, welcome Adam Copeland, and or all that CM Punk money is now Adam Copeland money. So I do think that that I feel that way as well. But I would also say that it's almost like in a sense that's almost like Roman emperors in a sense where CM Punk is not there anymore, and now you have somebody else really. So I really think that Adam Copeland has a lot of responsibilities, and he really needs to live up to all that. So it's gonna be kind of interesting because he is a lot older. He can get injured very easily. And I think, as people say, it's more of a hardcore style, really. So I do think that what he and Tony Khan have to really do is if there are signs where he can't handle barbed wire death matches or being choke slam on stairs or whatever, he needs to kind of be like, you know what, we need to change this up, and I need to change my style. And I need to do different things in the ring. Really, he should not be. He should really watch his health, really, because you don't want another situation where he gets injured, he's out for a long time, or you do something where he gets hurt really badly and you can't wrestle again. You know, obviously, whatever CM Punk has done, whatever damage he's done, Adam Cole wiped that away by just appearing. But I'm no Adam Copeland that did that way just by appearing. So I do think that give it another 4 or 5 years, and we'll see where we're at with this. And I hope that I wish AEW very well with Adam Copeland. I wish him like 6 years of great health. He does it the rest of his contract. I wish there's no drama, and if there's any like issues with people like just with like backstage drama, Tony Khan and other people get involved and be like, okay, this has to stop. We're here to make money, and we're here to put out the best product. We're also here to say, you know what a great end to the rest of your career by you being here. So no CM Punk backstage drama, and if other people are giving him shit, Tony Khan has to be on top of that. So if Jungle Boy does like Real Glass Cry Me a River, or other type of shit, Tony Khan needs to be like, okay, Adam, you don't talk to him, I talk to him, and I'll handle the motherfucker. So. There's a lot of things that can go very well. There's a lot of things that can go very wrong. So, I'm happy to give you guys another review of Wrestle Dream. And I also have to say, for those who have stick to the end of the video, that I'm going to do 2 reviews. So this is going to be the one without the footage, and I'm going to do another one with footage and still shots, because I've been getting like a bunch of copyright claim violations, and I just don't want to lose my channel. So I have to start doing still frames, but I also want to do videos where I'm just talking to the microphone talking to the camera about my review of it, because I don't want a situation where they just take it down and I lose all my work and stuff like that. All right, that's all I gotta say. I'm actually going to the Philadelphia show, the Mohegan Sun show, and then I'm also going to the Collision Kia Forum show, and then also AEW Full Gear. So it's gonna be a hell of the next the next 7 weeks are gonna be a motherfucker, and I'm looking forward to it.